Have you ever just stopped and wondered why our brains seem, well, designed to make the same mistakes over and over and over again? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty radical idea from evolutionary psychology. It's called error management theory, and it suggests that our minds aren't actually built for perfect accuracy, but for survival by making very specific, predictable errors. I mean, think about it, right? You assume someone's flirting, but really, they're just being friendly. Or maybe you get accused of leading someone on when that was the absolute last thing on your mind. These kinds of miscommunications, they're not just awkward, they happen to all of us. And error management theory has a really compelling reason for why. Okay, so to really get this, it all comes down to one simple but really powerful idea. Not all mistakes are created equal. You know, misplacing your keys is an annoyance, but misjudging a real threat, that can be catastrophic. The cost of the error, that's everything. And that right there is the heart of error management theory. Our brains haven't evolved to be these perfect little truth detectors. Nope, they've evolved to be masters of risk management, consistently biased towards making the mistake that carries the smaller price tag. So this really boils down to two kinds of errors. First, you've got a false positive, that's believing something is true when it really isn't, like you see a threat that's not actually there. Then there's the false negative. That's believing something is false when, surprise, it's actually true. You completely miss a threat that is there. The entire theory hinges on which of these two mistakes is more dangerous. The absolute perfect example of this is a smoke detector. A false positive, the alarm blaring because you burnt some toast, is super annoying, right? But the cost is pretty low. But a false negative, the detector staying silent during a real fire, that is absolutely catastrophic. The costs are just wildly different. And this is exactly why smoke detectors are designed to be overly sensitive. They're intentionally calibrated to make the less costly error. So that annoying beep from your toaster, that's not a bug. It's literally a life-saving feature. So what in the world does this have to do with the human mind? Well, the theory proposes that evolution has basically installed these same kinds of smoke detectors right inside our brains, especially for navigating our super complex social world. And these mental alarms, they get loudest in really high-stakes social situations, especially things like dating and relationships. Because from an evolutionary standpoint, the cost of a misjudgment here can be absolutely immense. Okay, so let's see how this plays out differently for men and women, on average. For a man, way back in our ancestral past, what was the cost of missing a reproductive opportunity, a false negative? Well, it was evolutionary failure, game over. But the cost of thinking a woman was interested when she wasn't? A little bit of embarrassment, some awkwardness. The cheaper error, by far, is to just assume interest. Now, let's flip it. For a woman, ancestrally speaking, the costs were totally inverted. Falsely believing a man was committed and then being abandoned with a child, that was catastrophic. But mistrusting a man who was actually genuinely committed, well, that was a missed opportunity, sure, but it was way less devastating. So this evolutionary math creates a really powerful bias toward being skeptical about a partner's true intention. And what happens when these two opposing biases collide? Well, you get classic relationship conflicts. You have men who are biased to see interest, complaining about being led on. And you have women who are biased to be skeptical of commitment, complaining that a relationship is moving too quickly. But wait, it gets even more nuanced than just men versus women. The theory actually predicts that the bias isn't really tied to your gender, but to who ultimately bears the cost of making a mistake. And because the bias follows the cost, not gender itself, the theory makes some pretty fascinating predictions. And not just about partners, but about their families too. Just take a look at this. A daughter's highest cost error is trusting the wrong person. Now, because a father shares her genetic investment, he also pays a price if she gets deceived. So the theory predicts he'll actually adopt her skeptical bias. Now look at the son. His highest cost error is a mischance. His mother shares in that potential loss, so she might adopt his overperception bias, encouraging him to take a chance. And here's another really powerful piece of the puzzle that backs this up. Studies have found that this commitment skepticism bias often fades in postmenopausal women. And why is that? Well, because the enormous potential cost of being left to raise a child is no longer a factor. When the cost disappears, so does the bias. It's fascinating. Now, of course, this isn't the only explanation out there. Other theories suggest we just project our own feelings onto people or that our interest is reciprocal. But what's really interesting is that these biases, they persist even in the world's most gender egalitarian societies, like Norway. And that suggests there's something much deeper at play here than just cultural conditioning. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? How should we think about our own little social missteps and blunders? I think the single most important thing to remember is this. Our minds are not truth machines. They are survival machines. They're not designed to give us a perfectly accurate picture of reality, but to help us navigate it while avoiding the most catastrophic outcomes. And that is such a powerful way to reframe things. The next time you misread a social cue or someone completely misreads you, try not to see it as some kind of personal failure. Instead, just consider that you might be hearing the ancient, built-in smoke detectors of the human mind going off. So let's end with a question to really bring this into your own life. We all do it. We all default to the cheaper error. Maybe you check that the door is locked a second time because, hey, the cost of being wrong is just too high. But think about your interactions with people. Where is your internal smoke detector set just a little too high, leading to misunderstanding?